New details today on an upcoming public inquiry into election meddling in our country. It's a political scandal that dominated much of last year. Accusations that Canadian elections were being targeted by foreign governments. Well, the Trudeau government initially resisted calls for an inquiry, but negotiated terms with the opposition over the summer, and the official process will kick off in January. With a format and prosecutor Canadians will recognize from the Freedom Convoy inquiry, this time, though, looking into past political interference in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. The front bench back with us: Sabrina Grover, Larissa Waller, Guratan Singh, and Rachel Aiello. To the politics on this, Sabrina, to you in Calgary, this inquiry gearing up, is there a risk here for the Trudeau government? What do you think?
Honestly, I think that the way that it's progressing, it's going to have very little in terms of political legs. I think you're going to not see the Conservatives, certainly not see the NDP really engage with the inquiry. The Conservatives have really carved out affordability as the issue that they're going to hang their hat on for the next 12 to 18 months at least. And the NDP didn't really interact with the foreign interference piece to a super high extent, in the months leading up to it. I think that the government has shown that they were willing to negotiate. I think that they all came to terms agreeably on this matter. And I think that what we need to do now is just watch the inquiry progress and see what the results are. And I think the final report is due December 2024.
Yeah, Rachel Aiello, you've been writing on this for ctvnews.ca, covering it extensively. Your take on what this means?
Well, I think in terms of the question of whether this is going to be challenging for the Liberals really hinges on what is revealed. And that remains a big question, Todd, because of the national security considerations around this whole process. What I'm going to be watching for is in this next step, they've essentially asked for applicants to submit if they want to have standing. So individuals, groups, parties that want to participate in these. If that includes federal political parties, if they have an interest in bringing their evidence to the table, what that includes, and whether or not they are granted standing. I think that would be one marked change from what happened in the Emergencies Act inquiry instance. And then from there, it's a really tight timeline, pressure on the government indirectly in what was announced today to make sure they're presenting their documents in a timely fashion, something that was a challenge during the public inquiry into the Emergencies Act and the Freedom Convoy. So a lot of potential hiccups and small issues potentially for the Liberals. But until we really get a scope of who's going to be involved, who's going to be a player, and if it's going to be more or not than what we've already heard rehashed over multiple parliamentary committees.
Guratan, to you. I mean, the Liberals accused of being asleep at the wheel when it comes to Chinese interference, other countries as well targeting Canada, while allies like the US, the UK, Australia were on it, so to speak. Canada wasn't. We dropped the ball. That's the criticism anyway. What do you think?
I think this issue of foreign interference is incredibly important, and this is something that it's important that we now have concrete steps that allow for greater engagement and greater voices to be heard. Let's keep in mind when we talk about the issue of foreign interference in Canada, it now really is a broad scope of everything ranging from interference in our elections, intimidation, and now evidence of India being involved in the assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, along with allegations against Iran, Russia, China, and other nations. So I think this is a crucially important issue for our democracy. It's going to be really important to see how this plays out and how it impacts and how the Liberal government responds to this issue. And more than anything, I think that it's really important that this stays a nonpartisan issue where Canadians can really have an opportunity to voice their fears, frustrations, and concerns around the fact that their safety in many cases has been in jeopardy in Canada from foreign nations.
Yeah, Larissa, this inquiry for sure will bring the issue of foreign interference back into the headlines, arguably something the Liberals have been trying to shake as we get, yes, closer to a federal election. And your party has said, Justin Trudeau cannot be trusted when it comes to national security. They've been, they've dropped the ball on this, and they didn't really understand just how serious it actually was.
So I think that the criticism's fair in the context that Conservatives raised concerns in the 2019 and 21 elections about foreign interference. I agree with everybody else that I think that this issue rises to a national interest sort of level. I wouldn't be surprised to see all political parties take almost a high road on this one. One, it's not an election issue in terms of direct to voter campaigning. That is really going to be, the carbon tax, cost of living, and then some regional issues. On foreign interference, I also agree that they should be looking more than just electoral interference. Personal safety of diaspora members is a huge concern. I'm interested to see how they will protect that and protect identities and protect national security interests. But I think even in establishing, the framework for this public inquiry, you saw a lot of the parties kind of come with good faith, and I would expect that to continue as the process unrolls. I also agree that the timelines seem really quick, so it looks like they're going to have to get through a lot of information pretty quickly. I think the first draft of the report is due at the end of February.
Yeah, absolutely. Sabrina, do you agree?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a tight timeline. I think one of the things that's most important to communicate out of this whole process is going to be faith for Canadians to believe and to be trustworthy of our institutions, right? I think that earlier this year, with all of the conversation around foreign interference, the thing that we could have lost most on is the fact that Canadians may not trust these institutions or may not trust the political parties to be able to uphold our democratic integrity. So I think that that's the most important thing. And if I was the Liberals, I would be reinforcing the message that they have consistently focused on democratic integrity, that they had tackled, they'd started to tackle foreign interference well before this inquiry, well before it was raised earlier this year. And I think that that needs to be the key part of what they get out of this. I think that this file is in really steady hands with Dominic LeBlanc now. And I think that you'll continue to see that the importance of reinforcing the stability of our institutions is going to come to the forefront for the Liberals.
And Rachel, if there are any bombshells that come from this inquiry, what might that mean for the government?
Well, the other thing everyone, I think, needs to keep in mind is the timeline in which this is unfolding. Yes, that first little bit is going to happen early next year with that initial report in February, but then the commissioner has signaled that she's going to be doing a second round of public hearings that would be more forward-looking on how the government could further shore up elections in the fall, around September, and then the final report December. The next election isn't scheduled until 2025, but this process would conclude at the end of 2024. So this is all happening in an interesting situation where if we get increasing talk about an election coming early while this inquiry into an election is going on, that could get quite messy. So we'll have to kind of wait and see in terms of the substance and what new revelations there will be. There have been a number of parliamentary committees looking at this for some time and hearing from all sides. And so it'll be interesting to see what more, if anything more, is revealed. And then from there, I think Todd will be able to judge what impact that would have going forward.
We got 30 seconds left for you, Garat, and last word on this. What do you think?
I think my last word would be this. When initially this conversation happened around foreign interference, it was largely focused around China, Russia, and its involvement in our elections. The conversation on foreign interference has changed dramatically with evidence that India was involved in the assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. I think this is going to reframe the discussion around foreign interference and make it beyond just election interference, but actually about the safety of Canadians living in Canada.
Garat and Singh, Larissa Waller joining us, Sabrina Grover, and our very own Rachel Aiello, our front bench on this Friday. Great to see all four of you, and have a great weekend ahead.